What is up, everybody? Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here. Welcome to another film collection live stream. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the movies that are in my physical media collection that begin with the letter T. Every single time I do one of these, I say, this one's going to be pretty short, I think. Honestly, I think this one will be. I intentionally just kept it centered on the letter T, because there isn't a whole lot. I have basically like a stack and a half of movies to talk about today. And a lot of them are from like franchises, so there's multiple movies in each one. So I can get a lot of them out of the way. And it'll be pretty cool. No, I do not, Sebastian, but welcome to the stream. Welcome, Waves and Games. Welcome, Peter. Glad to see you. So not a whole lot of movies to talk about. Doesn't mean I'm not going to ramble on and on about them, so be prepared. So, thanks everyone for coming, and let's just get started. Once again, not anything added to the collection that's new that falls before the letter T in my collection. So, actually been not spending a whole lot in July. There's not going to be a video game pickup stream like there normally would be at the end of the month, because I've bought 0 games, maybe 2 games. This month. So there'll be another 2-month combo at the end of August, because August is my birthday month and shit tends to happen in that month. Anyway, movies. Shall we get going? Starting off with the extended cut of Taken. The movie that put Liam Neeson back on the map. He was kind of turning into the guy that was playing dads and just bit parts in other people's movies, and then what's his name? Luc Besson, who did La Femme Nikita, Fifth Element, Valerian, and The City of a Thousand Planets. He did a long stint where he didn't direct any movies at all. All he did was write movies, he wrote screenplays, and he produced movies that he wrote. And Taken was one of them. And he tends to get older people who I wouldn't say are exactly known for action films to be in his movies, and this was the one that Liam Neeson was in, that he cast Liam Neeson in. He wrote this. Pierre Morel directed it. I don't know who he is or what he's done before or after this, but I saw this before it hit theaters. A friend of mine that I worked with gave me a bootleg DVD of the European cut of this movie, which is what we call the extended cut over here. There's a scene. It's when Liam Neeson has captured somebody who he suspects knows where his daughter is at, and he has him tied to a chair, and if I remember correctly, he electrocutes him in the chair. He shocks him or whatever to get him to tell him or to say what he knows. In the European version that I saw, he basically nails spikes into his thighs and then electrocutes him with those. That was what they cut out to make this PG-13 in the States, but that one little thing was what lied between an R and a PG-13, because if I remember correctly, you saw him hammering the spikes in. You never saw any blood. It was just the act of that happening got it the R rating, and they didn't want that. But anyway, yeah, Liam Neeson's daughter gets kidnapped. Liam Neeson is an ex-Black Ops person for the military, and goes on the warpath trying to find his daughter, who's been kidnapped and is going to get human trafficked into, I think, was it Arabia or something like that, or something like that. And he goes out on the hunt to find her and bring her back home. There's 2 sequels to this, which I do not like at all, which is why I don't have them in my collection. I really don't like them at all. The second movie is basically this all over again, just I think it's in Paris, and a lot of ridiculous, stupid stuff happens in that movie. If some random car decided to run the gate at some embassy, I think it was the American embassy in another country, that car is going to get lit up. People are going to just unload their weapons. All the guards will unload their weapons on that car, sight unseen. They're not going to stand there and gape at the car as it careens through the gate and then slides to a stop, and the people get out and walk in. No, they're dead. And I was just like, this is stupid. And I really had a cool idea for what I thought the second movie should have been, where after what happens to the daughter in the first movie with the kidnapping and the human trafficking and all that kind of stuff, you think that she would be like, you know what? I want to learn what you know, Dad. Teach me everything you know so this shit doesn't happen again. And I thought it would have been a cool twist if Liam Neeson and his wife, played by Famke Janssen, were the ones who get kidnapped because of something he did previously when he was in the military. And the daughter's the one that has to go and find them. I thought that would have been a cool twist, but they didn't do that. There's a little bit of a moment where the daughter kind of does something like that, but it lasts for like 5 minutes. But I thought it would have been a fun twist to the formula. And then the third movie is just straight up boring. Straight up boring. What is up, Charlie? How's it going? So, first movie is the only one I own in this franchise, and it's probably the only one I will ever own. Next up are... It was supposed to be a trilogy, I think, but it didn't actually work out that way. I think there was plans for... No, there was a third movie, but it went direct to video, and I don't even think it was planned to be a movie in this franchise. And then whoever it was bought the rights to turn that movie into a movie in this franchise after the fact. Anyway, we're talking the Tales from the Crypt films. Got these from Scream Factory, so you have Demonite and you have Bordello of Blood. Demonite was the first one. Saw this in the theater opening night with a couple of friends, and holy shit, did this movie blow my mind. It was everything I liked about the Tales from the Crypt television show, amped to the nth degree. I always liked the kind of dark humor, has it. I always liked, the horror, has it. I always liked the gore, has it. I always kind of liked the really twisted storylines, has it. It's just everything I loved about the show in movie form. And it had a great cast, too. You got Billy Zane playing the lead villain, and he's just, like, chewing the scenery Ricardo Montalban style. It is awesome. I had seen Jada Pinkett in Low Down Dirty Shame, I think not too long before this came out, and I was like, she can't act. I can't stand her. And then I saw her in this, and I was like, I like her. Because she's got spunk. She's, like, a really awesome final girl in the movie, who starts out being real mousy and like all talk and no follow through, and then by the end of the movie she is like as tough as nails, which I thought was great. Who else was in here? Charles Fleischer, the guy who's the voice of Roger Rabbit, is in here too. Brenda Backey, Thomas Hayden Church. I think he was still on Wings when this came out. William Sadler plays the lead. He's pretty awesome in it too. It is great. It's one of my favorite horror movies, and it's just really fast-paced and fun, and I absolutely love it. And then you have the next one, because just like the TV show, it's a anthology series of films. So you have Bordello of Blood, which has absolutely zero connection to Demonite. This one's all about a vampire brothel, and this one... So, Demonite had a pretty decent budget. It had a really good director, Ernest Dickerson. He went on to do a couple of bigger movies, I think, also. But for some reason, that movie made a profit, but they slashed the budget for the sequel. I don't see the reasoning behind that. And plus, Gilbert Adler, who was like a producer on the Tales from the Crypt TV show, decided that it was his turn to step up and direct something, and he is terrible. I saw this in the theater opening weekend with my brother, and when it was over, we were both kind of like, I don't think we're going to get any more movies in this franchise. Because we both thought it was pretty bad. I know there's people out there who like it. This one is actually like funnier than Demonite. This one is actually more of like a vampire comedy. I mean, there's a whole action scene with Dennis. What is his name? Dennis Miller is the lead in it. Dennis freaking Miller, of all people. Where there's like an action scene where they're taking out vampires with squirt guns, like super soakers filled with holy water, inside the brothel, and they're playing Ballroom Blitz by Sweet. And it's just like the goofiest thing you've ever seen in your life. Corey Feldman is in this also. Erica Leniak. Chris Sarandon, I thought was kind of funny that he's playing like the opposite of the character he played in Fright Night. It has some cool moments, some cool gore stuff, but it's like really, I thought, badly cast and really badly directed because it looks really cheap to me. So, yeah, the franchise did technically end here. But there was another movie that ended up becoming Tales from the Crypt Presents, I think it's called Cursed or something. And I remember it went straight to video. And I remember it showed up at the video store I was working at, and I was like, the hell is this? And I still have not watched it. And here's another movie I got from Scream Factory, same vein as Tales from the Crypt, and it's Tales from the Hood. Got this not too long ago. It's actually still sealed, but I've seen this plenty of times. I actually saw this in the theater, not during its original run. If I remember correctly, it did not really play at a lot of the places by me And if it did not play for very long. But apparently it did make a sequel because there's a third movie in this series coming out next month or something. But it is an anthology horror movie, kind of like Creepshow, but it's all like urban style stories. And for the most part, it's pretty good. But the coolest thing about this was seeing this in the theater at the Music Box during that 24-hour horror movie marathon that I go to every single year. And they played this 2 years ago, I want to say. And seeing that movie, the movie with a crowd, was just really fun. I mean, like, people were like hooting and hollering. The moment the police would show up in a scene, everyone in the theater was like throwing shit at the screen. It was just really, really fun. Clarence Williams III plays the Crypt Keeper. He's the mortician in this, because was it like 3 wannabe gang members or whatever? They break into a mortuary. I don't know if they were there to steal. I can't remember if they were there to steal stuff from the bodies or what. But they break in and they meet the mortician who runs the place. And he tells them stories about each of the corpses that he has in coffins waiting for a funeral that are in the place. And each one of those stories is one of the little mini movies that you get in the movie. And it was pretty clever. It was pretty fun. The guy who directed this directed every single episode of The Chappelle Show. But I think it's a real clever twist on one of those anthology horror movies. I really like it. I have not watched the second one, and I don't know if I'll watch the third one or not, because the second one went direct to video, and it did not look that great. If you want to watch something similar, watch Bones with Snoop Dogg. Okay, here's a love it or hate it type of movie. I hated it when I first saw it, and then when it came to home video, I watched it again, and I was like, I guess I just thought it was going to be something else. And I wasn't prepared for it. And that's Tank Girl. Saw this in the theater with a bunch of friends opening weekend. We're all like, alternative. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be this alternative comic book type movie. And it was just like random stuff happening and bad dialogue and just cool makeup effects and stuff. But I don't think any of us were really prepared for it. Because if I remember correctly, every single one, there must have been 4 of us. All of us walked out of that theater going, the fuck did we just watch? And I didn't really think twice about it after that. And then it came out on home video, and my father rented it, and we all watched it, and I watched it at the house. I remember going like, I don't want to watch this crap again, but I did. Because I mainly remember like the soundtrack being pretty awesome. It was like all like 90s alternative rock bands, and like it was a Bjork and Courtney Love and a bunch of other stuff. L7, I think, was on the soundtrack. Portishead. So, watched it again, and I think I was in the right frame of mind for it this time. Because I got it. And I was like, it's trying to do the opposite of what Batman was. It was just trying to be strange and off the wall and weird. And I got it. And I really enjoy it. And Lori Petty, like, this movie kind of ruined her career for a little while. Because she was like a rising star until this. Like, she had done Point Break and League of Their Own and something else, I want to say. Can't remember exactly what. But it was like, this was like her starring role. This was her big chance, and nobody went and saw it. Also because there was a ton, you watch the documentary that's on this Blu-ray, there was a ton of studio interference. Like, when the movie went into production, like, the producers were like, and MGM, or was it United Artists, were like, we're going to leave you alone, do what you want. And then it was like the moment they started filming, just everyone just started giving them notes and telling them what they could and couldn't do. And it was like, why did you even want to get this movie made if you're just going to interfere the whole time? And the movie kind of suffers for it. But I still enjoy it because it's kind of like a nice time capsule of the 90s. And it's just a silly, fun movie. And it stars, Lori Petty at the height of her powers. I think she's really hot in that movie. And especially Naomi freaking Watts. It was her first movie ever. Naomi freaking Watts. And she is adorable. And it has one of my favorite lines of dialogue in it also, and I quote it a lot. Ice-T and his group of kangaroo mutant people. You heard that correctly. Capture Lori Petty, Tank Girl, and Naomi Watts, Jet Girl. And they drug them and are interrogating them to find out if they work for Water and Power, which is the evil entity in the movie. And Ice-T is like, I guess he was an ex-cop before he became a Ripper, which is like the kangaroo hybrid people. And he's like, how much did Water and Power pay you to spy on us? And because she's high as shit, Tank Girl goes, $2.15. And if you watch Naomi Watts in the shot, I think she ad-libbed that line because Naomi Watts like breaks character and like has to cover her mouth to stop herself from laughing hysterically. And I love that. So whenever I hear someone say, anywhere I'm at, if I hear someone say, how much does that cost? I'll go, $2.15. And yeah, nobody gets it. Anyway, triple feature of the 3 live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies from the 90s. The only one I can legit say I enjoy is the original one, the first one. I remember my brother was huge into the Turtles at the time. I was okay with it. I didn't think it was awesome. I didn't think it was bad. It was just kind of there. The cartoon was huge. My brother was collecting all the toys. My brother, we used to have a little black and white video camera. Charlie can talk about this too. We had this old black and white video camera called the PXL 2000. It was a Fisher-Price video camera that ran on high bias audio cassettes, and it filmed in black and white. So my brother always wanted to make these movies with his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys. Whatever. Yeah, we made a couple. They never were good. None of those were good. So when the movie came out, my brother was like, we gotta go. And I was like, fine, I'll check it out. I wasn't surprised. I was surprised to see how dark the movie was. I thought it was just going to be like this live-action version of the cartoon. It was going to be silly and goofy and, childish and cowabunga all over the place and people spinning slices of cheese on bow staffs and whatnot. Or a slice of cheese pizza. And it's not. It was actually, to me, based more on the comic books, which were really dark and violent. There was a lot of gritty stuff going on in the movie, and I just wasn't prepared for it. And it took me by surprise, and I really enjoyed it. It was light on jokes and kind of heavy on action and character development, which surprised the hell out of me. Propelled, what is his name? Steve Barron. His career went through the roof after this. He directed a whole shitload of stuff. And then a year later, they pumped out part 2. It's unheard of nowadays for a sequel to a movie to come out a year after the first one did. Best toys ever. Oh, the toy, the camera. Yeah. Oh God, I used that thing till it stopped working. And my brother wanted to go see part 2, so we went and saw it, and I was like, what happened here? Perfect opportunity to introduce Bebop and Rocksteady, but for some reason they couldn't put them in the movie, so they created Toka and Razor, and they sucked. And it's also about the fact that what's his name, Shredder's still alive, and what is the big finale with the Shredder? It's him, drinking the ooze or getting covered in the ooze and becoming Super Shredder, and he actually kills himself by they're fighting under a dock, and he hits a bunch of the logs holding the dock up, and it crashes on himself, and it's oh, that's the big epic finale here? Eat a dick. The only thing I remember this movie for, really, is, there's 2 things. There's Ernie Reyes Jr., who I remember from The Last Dragon, and he's pretty awesome. If I remember correctly, he played one of the Turtles in the first movie. So they promoted him to an actual featured character in the second one. For some reason, they also recast April O'Neil, and the girl that plays him is a soap opera star, and she sucked. I loved Judith Hoag in the first one. Anyway, the thing I remember the most is Vanilla Ice popping up with that Go Ninja Go song. It's so bad. And then there's the third one. I think that came out 2 years after part 2. And that's I think they were trying to do Turtles in Time, from the video game, but they effed it up. And it's just really slow and boring and just not that good. So I would say the reason I bought this movie was for the first one, but I'm not sad that I got the other 2 because I could use these for the movie starting, and we used part 2 already. But yeah, the first one's the only one worth watching. And then there's this CGI animated Turtles movie, TMNT, which I actually saw in the theater with Charlie over there, Epic Die Studio. This one is fantastic. This is a combination of the cartoon, the live-action movies, and the toy line. It's just everything combined into one. It's dark. It's a little more adult. It doesn't really deal with any of the villains that were set up in the toys or the cartoons or the other movies. It's a whole new enemy played by Patrick Stewart. And it's kind of a cool story. The fight scenes are fantastic. I think they did mocap for especially the fight between Leonardo and Raphael on the rooftop in the rain, which I thought was great. It is super fun. This is probably my favorite of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies. I think I just mumbled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Whatever. I like this one a lot. Yeah, exactly. It's really, really good. It surprised me. It came out of nowhere. I didn't realize that were Turtles even popular at that point in time. When did this come out? This came out in 2007. Were the Turtles still a thing in 2007? I don't remember. I don't know if any of those cartoon shows had come out. They were hitting a resurgence, so it makes sense that they did that. But that's the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle things I've ever seen. And I do not own any of the Michael Bay movies because they are poop. Even though Krang is in the second one. Second one I think is better than the first one, but it's still a piece of shit. Anyway, you want to talk about an awesome piece of shit? Terminal Velocity. I remember seeing the trailers for this, and I remember going like, that looks awful. It was like trying its hardest to look like Speed with skydiving. And then it came out on video, on home video. It's a cycle where reboot every year, 3 years, something like that. I still need to watch the Batman meets the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie that they have out on Blu-ray right now. This came out on video. I was working at the video store in the 90s, and this was one of the movies that I was given the preview screener on tape. You know, the ones the company, all the movie companies would send all the video stores like a screener copy, so the owners of those stores can watch it and decide how many copies they want to buy for their store to put out for rent. Well, I was given the screener and a couple other ones for this. Pretty big thing here. And my boss was like, is it good? I was like, no, it's not. But it's just really fun and fast-paced, and people are going to love it. And whenever people would come into the video store and ask me, what's a movie that you would recommend? And I would be like, do you like action movies? And like, yeah. Do you like comedies? Yeah. Go rent Terminal Velocity. You'll love it. And they would always come back and be like, that was so good. But it's Charlie Sheen and Natasha Kinski, and I hadn't seen her in a movie since probably Cat People. She disappeared off the face of the earth for a good 10 years. And it's trying to be like I said, Speed in the air. It's just a goofy, silly action movie where everything that can fall out of a plane does fall out of a plane, including James Gandolfini and a car and crazy stuff. It is super fun. It is silly and bizarre, but it's kind of awesome at the same time. I really enjoyed that one. And then we've got the franchise that won't die. I'm kind of glad. I hope we get another one in this franchise. So, okay, I don't own all the movies in the franchise because there's some of them that I think are just, well, one specifically that I think is absolute doo-doo. We're talking the Terminator. The original Terminator. Then I have T2. This is the Skynet edition. If you remember when I did the box sets, I have a 3D and 4K Blu-ray version of Terminator 2 in a box set. I'll explain why I have this later. Then I have Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, Terminator Genesis in 3D, and Terminator Dark Fate on 4K. Okay, so I've said it I don't know how many times in these streams. Not allowed to watch horror movies as a kid. My parents always thought they would break my brain and my brother's brain, so we weren't really allowed to watch horror movies. PG ones, like I watched Poltergeist and Jaws and stuff like that, but when it came to like R-rated ones, it was no. But for some reason, R-rated action movies and R-rated science fiction movies were perfectly fine. So I remember my parents went bowling one night. They left me and my brother with a babysitter, and they rented the Terminator for us. And holy shit, grossed me out more than once. The whole cutting of the eyeball thing was like, no. But it was awesome, and this became like my favorite frickin' movie ever. As a little kid, so this came out in 84, I was like 9 years old. Didn't really understand the plot line at all, the whole, temporal paradoxy thing, like I'm my own, I'm my own grandfather or whatever it is. But like I watched it as an adult, and I'm just like, holy shit, this is kind of a clever story. James Cameron was a goddamn genius. He took like a low budget piece of shit, script and turned it into something amazing, and really smart and fast paced and fun and with likable characters and everything. It is a perfect sci-fi action movie. And Schwarzenegger, who was originally going to play Hicks, luckily he was like, you know what? I think I want to play the Terminator instead. And that was an awesome idea by him, because that probably would not have worked if he was playing the hero. You got this huge, gigantic guy fighting. I think originally the Terminator was supposed to be Lance Henriksen. And when Schwarzenegger expressed interest in playing the Terminator instead, they were like, should we put Henriksen in the the Kyle Reese role, and they're like, no, there's this other guy that auditioned really well over here named Michael Biehn. We'll bring him in instead. But Hendrickson's still going to be it. He's just going to have 1 or 2 lines later on. But it's a fantastic movie. Absolutely love it. Linda Hamilton, adorable. And then I remember this came out like, what, 8 years later? But no, 7 years later. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, blows the first movie out of the water. Don't get me wrong, the first movie is still a classic. I absolutely love it. But T2 is just everything and more. Absolutely fantastic. Pioneered CGI. We wouldn't have modern day CGI if it wasn't for this movie. It pioneered new ways of editing action movies, new ways to film action. James Cameron's a goddamn genius. You know, make him do all the sequels because he did Aliens, and like the Aliens is better than Alien. You know, just have him do it. If you're iffy about your sequel working, just hire James Cameron to do it, and he'll make it awesome. But absolutely love everything about it. Saw this in the theater, I want to say 3 or 4 times. I remember my grandmother wanted to see it, and she's a huge Arnold fan, and I remember the whole time we're sitting there watching it, I would just hear her out of the corner of her mouth going like, oh my. Every time he was on screen, oh my. Absolutely love it. But the reason I have this Skynet edition is this is the extended cut. And like James Cameron, whenever he realizes that his movie is running pretty long, how does he, you know, pare the movie down? He doesn't take out little moments. He cuts out entire subplots. There was what was the whole subplot in here? It's not like The Abyss. The Abyss, it was the whole idea behind what the aliens were there for. Aliens, it was the sentry guns and the thing with Ripley's daughter. Here, they cut out Arnold actually become, like the Terminator actually becoming like a learning thing. Like he learns how to become more human, which kind of more explains why at the end of the movie, he's actually like sad to say goodbye to John. There's also more stuff with the T-1000. They kind of develop him a little bit more. They show you the way he works and the way he operates. Like when he kills John Connor's foster parents with that whole thing with the dog on the phone, and then he like, you know, he turns out to be the mother, and he kills the father while he's drinking the milk. They show him going to John's room, and he starts feeling everything with his hands, the walls, the bed, everything. That's how he sees. And it's interesting. And then there's like more to the ending of the movie after Arnold shatters the T-1000 when he freezes him. They show that actually damaged the T-1000, and everything that he was doing from the point where he reforms to being killed, it's like there was all this stuff they cut out. Like he'll run his hand along this railing and his hand becomes a part of the railing and he can't control it. Or every time he takes a step, his feet become part of whatever he is stepping on. It's like he's jacked up. And it was supposed to be there to give you like a sense of hope, like, yes, this thing can be killed. Technically, it is injured, kind of the way Arnold gets injured, with his arm gets ripped off and all that shit. So it was kind of neat, but they cut all that stuff out just for pacing issues. And there's also the original ending, which I thought was really stupid. I like the whole thing with the road. Then you hear Sarah's narration saying, like, yeah, we stopped Judgment Day, but, you know, could still happen. And there was this ending that they shot where she's an old woman sitting in the park watching an adult John play with his kids and all that, and she's like, oh, Judgment Day never happened. So I think that's a better version of the movie, just like every other director's cut or extended cut of James Cameron's movies are. And then there's part 3, which came out in 91. Yeah, 1991, and this came out in 2003, so 12 years later. And, you know, 12 years later, Arnold still managed to get in the exact same shape he was in Terminator 2, which I thought was pretty impressive. He did not look like he aged. But the thing with this was, all it really is trying to top what T2 did. It's like everything T2 did, we're going to do the exact same thing, we're just going to do it bigger. And Arnold ended up putting like a bunch of the salary that he earned for making this movie back into the movie to make sure that the action scenes were as big as they were described to him when they pitched him the part, or the movie. I like it. I enjoy it. I don't think it's nearly as good as the first two at all. But it's fun. The action scenes are pretty cool. The CGI and the special effects are awesome. I really like the TX, the Terminatrix. I really like Kristanna Loken as her. I thought she did a really good job, except when she fucking orgasms out of nowhere when she touches that tampon to her tongue. That was just silly. I was like, you thought that was a good idea to tell her to like go when she like realizes that John Connor is in the building with her? But the thing I like the most about this movie is the ending. The ending is ballsy as hell. As safe as the rest of the movie played it, the ending is just kind of like, oh. Terminator 3. If you remember the scene where the Terminatrix is in the pound, in the vet's office looking for Kate Brewster, what's her goddamn name? Claire Danes. And she sees that bloodied gauze pad on the floor, and the TX touches it to her tongue and goes, ah! Oh my god, dude, get on that. Watch at least the first 3. The trilogy itself. But yeah, the ending just makes the movie, because I like the idea that it was inevitable. You can delay it as long as you want. It's just always going to happen. And I love the fact that the movie ended on that note. And I was like, okay, and if we make another one, that is going to be one of the coolest freaking things ever. And then we got Terminator Salvation, and I was like, no, we didn't. I do not own Terminator Salvation. I absolutely hate it. Saw it in the theater opening weekend. I was super excited about it. It was supposed to be the first part of like a trilogy of movies about the Terminator universe after the apocalypse. Like, it actually took place in that future world. And they hired McG, who did the 2 Charlie's Angels movies, to direct it. Yeah, and for some reason he thought that the whole aesthetic that James Cameron set up in the original 2 movies, even the 3rd movie, stuck to it. It's in a never-ending darkness. Let's set the whole movie during the daytime. And it's just like, I hated the casting, I hated the story, I hated the fact that they changed the ending. If they had left in the original ending of Salvation, I might have liked it more, but I didn't. The whole addition of CGI Arnold into it just so he could be in the movie for a good, 10 seconds as like CGI Arnold robot. It's bad. Even Christian Bale kind of sucks in it. So I do not like that one. I do not own that one. There is an extended cut of it available. I have watched it. My father bought a copy of that. I watched it with my ex, and we were both like, pfft. So the series was dead pretty much after that, because it really underperformed. But then, out of nowhere, we got Terminator Genisys. And this was like the big return. We're going to start another trilogy within the series, which was going to act like a Star Trek reboot. You know how the J.J. Abrams movies kind of rebooted the series by having like an alternate timeline instead of the main timeline? Same thing here. We see the events that led up to where the original movie started, and something happens, and everything is changed, and now everything is new. I loved that idea. I thought that was fantastic. I didn't really like that they ruined the big twist in the trailers. And that kind of soiled the movie for me. In the trailers, the first trailer made it look like the guy who played Storm Shadow in the G.I. Joe movies. I can't remember his name. It's Boone something. I can't remember. That he was like a T-1000 that was going after Sarah Connor in the 80s. The trailer made it look like that was what the whole idea was, but it was just everything had been changed. Now there's a T-1000 in the 80s. And no, that's not it. That's like the first 20 minutes of the movie. And I was glad that they did that when I saw the movie. But in the following trailers, they show the fact that the big bad is actually John Connor, who's been turned into a Terminator. And I was like, that is stupid. Why would you ruin that? That would have been the best freaking twist ever if it wasn't ruined for us in advance. They did the same thing with Salvation, of ruining the fact that the dude from Avatar, I can't remember his freaking name, that he was a Terminator. If they kept that secret throughout the whole trailer campaign, it would have been great when that actually happened. It would have been like, oh, damn moment. But no. But I found it fun. I found it entertaining. Some of the CGI is kind of dodgy whenever they try to like youthen up somebody. Like when they had the young Terminator, the young version of Arnold Terminator fighting the older Terminator at the very beginning. It looks kind of But I thought it was fun. I thought it was a neat jumping off point for another trilogy. I was really curious to see where it led. Yeah, I was really mad that they ruined that twist. It just... I don't understand marketing sometimes. Let's just ruin the whole movie before you see it. I was hoping there were more twists, but there really weren't. But like where the movie ends, there's still a bunch of unanswered questions. Like, who did send the Arnold robot way back in time to, the 70s or the 60s to rescue Sarah Connor when she was a little kid? Who sent that Terminator back? Arnold at the end of this movie is a T-1000 now, which I thought was kind of neat. it's just, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but just like Salvation, this underperformed, and that idea got canceled. So that came out in 2014, I think. 2015. Okay. And then last year, in October, we got Terminator Dark Fate, which is yet another time where they're going to reboot the series. So they tried to reboot it twice already. This is number 3. This is the good one. This one I really, really liked. I had zero expectations for it. I was just kind of like, oh, they brought, Linda Hamilton back. She's probably just there for a paycheck. Of course Arnold's going to be in it. Jesus, why not? It's his franchise. Of course he's going to do it. So I went and saw it. I waited a couple of weeks after it came out to see it, because I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Finally saw it, and I was like, okay, this movie erases every movie that came after Part 2. This is a direct sequel to the second film. And the movie starts off by basically telling you everything that you loved in Terminator 2, it's going away. And I was like, ballsy. You guys are awesome. Oh, with everybody being, with John getting killed? Yeah. But I was like, okay, you have my attention now. I was like, basically, they stopped Skynet at the end of Part 2. So, where did this Terminator come from that takes out John? John is not important anymore because there is no resistance anymore. There is no Terminator, or there is no Skynet. So it makes sense that they would try to start over with somebody else in his place. And at first, when they introduced the person who was going to be the new leader of the Resistance, I was like, oh god, are we just going to redo the whole storyline? Because like even Sarah Connor at one point says, oh, you must have the kid that, starts the rebellion again. And I'm like, no! I just thought it was really cool the way the rules, the new rules that they set up, the characters I really enjoyed. I loved Grace, played by Mackenzie Davis. I loved her character and what her character could do, that she was like this augmented human. She wasn't a Terminator. I loved that they brought back Sarah Connor, because Linda Hamilton is just owning this freaking movie. She gets top billing over Arnold, which I thought was great, because it is technically her movie. Arnold's in it for maybe 25 minutes, and he comes in really late in the movie. But even his reason for being is pretty cool and twisted and effed up. I just really liked everything about it, and it leaves it open for yet another sequel, which we're probably not going to get, because why would you release a Terminator movie, which has traditionally been a summer franchise, in October? That's horror movie season. Nobody went and saw it, and it bombed. So we're probably not getting this trilogy either. So sadness ensued. I really wished we got more movies in that little reboot franchise, but we're not. So I'm sad now. Anyway, John Carpenter's They Live. I absolutely love this movie. I love the fact that when I pre-ordered this from Scream Factory, it showed up with a buy sticker on it, just like what Nada would be seeing with the special glasses in this movie. This movie was very ahead of its time when it came out in 88, I want to say. 1988. Why that stuck in my head, I don't know. Back when I first saw it on home video, I was just like, oh, it's a cool action adventure movie. Watching it as an adult, you're like, oh my god, this is all about like Reaganomics and, class warfare and all this kind of shit. The 1%. Really appropriate nowadays too, if you really pay, you really want to read into it that way. But stars Roddy Piper as like he's kind of like a homeless drifter just looking for work, gets a job at a construction site, gets accepted into this like community of like really poor / homeless people that kind of stick together, and then out of nowhere the place gets ransacked by the police, and he hides in a church that's across the street from the raid, finds this like a box of sunglasses, and he puts them on thinking it's a pair of sunglasses, and it's like it clears up the world. Like all of a sudden he can see everything that's really around him. We've been invaded by aliens who are camouflaged. Unless you have these sunglasses on, you can't see them. They just look like normal everyday people that are trying to take over the planet through buyouts and economics, and basically run us into the ground until there's like nothing left, and they can just come in and take us over without any resistance, because everyone's hungry. Everyone, there's signs everywhere that are like saying consume, buy. You look at a dollar bill with the glasses on, and it says this is your god. Yeah, it turns off the filter. There's this wool has been pulled over our eyes and the glass is taken off. It is really clever and really fun and has a really down ending, just like every John Carpenter movie. But it's really awesome, and I like the fact that John Carpenter was trying to say something about what he saw was happening in the 80s, and it actually is more appropriate today than it was back then. So I would say this is essential watching for the current state of things. It's a fantastic movie. It put John Carpenter back on the map. It was a double... two movies that he had a contract for with the live pictures that he did in a row. One was in 87, that was Prince of Darkness, and then in next year he released They Live, and those put John Carpenter back on the map after Big Trouble in Little China bombed. Yep, I absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite films. I could watch it any day of the week. I remember, at the time that came out, I wasn't watching wrestling anymore. I used to watch wrestling in the early 80s. I think I stopped around 84. But Roddy Piper was one of my favorite wrestlers, so I was kind of like, oh, I'll watch it because Roddy Piper's in it. He's kind of cool. And Roddy Piper has a lot of freaking screen presence. He has charisma. He's fun to watch. He's using wrestling lines while he's, blowing aliens away. It's really awesome. That fight scene in the alley is amazing. I absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite films. And then we have these two films. We have John Carpenter, another John Carpenter joint. We got The Thing, his failed remake of, what was it, from the 50s, A Thing from Another World, but bombed back then because for some reason Universal decided to release this up against E.T. I think they were a week apart. Why would you do that? You are dumb. E.T. was just killing it at the box office. Everyone was all about touchy-feely aliens. Let's release the one about the alien that wants to melt you and eat you and consume you and become you. No one wants to see that shit. I remember, the reviews were saying that it was just, this overly gory, disgusting, snuff film type of thing. I remember Ebert, was it Ebert or Siskel, were they just, everything about the movie they absolutely hated. It has since become a cult classic, and it deserves it. It is a fantastic movie that's just all about, Cold War paranoia. Absolutely love it. The makeup effects, it's worth watching for the makeup, the practical effects alone. It is fantastic. There's no CGI in this movie. I don't think there's any real animation except maybe at the very end. There's some stop motion-y stuff. But for the most part, it is all practical stuff. Stan Winston worked on this. Rob Bottin. It is fantastic. Kurt Russell as the lead. Yes. He plays a great, stoic lead. It has a fantastic cast backing him up also. I remember one of the guys from Welcome Back, Kotter's in it. Oh, God. It is fantastic. Absolutely love it. Gory, graphic, disgusting at times, but it is amazing. Great soundtrack, too. And then we have the prequel, which explains everything that happened before that movie, because in the movie, the main characters that are at this Arctic research station, they find this Norwegian station that's been destroyed. Everybody's dead, looks like through suicide and shit, and they can't figure it out. And they find this half melted body of it looks like two people melted together, and that ends up being one of the aliens in the movie. Well, this movie's all about that Norwegian research station that they find. Yeah, Kurt Russell in any John Carpenter movie. Yeah, absolutely right, Cabot. You are right. So this movie is all about that Norwegian research station. And a little too late, I want to say. I don't think really anyone gave a shit anymore. If this came out 10 years maybe after the original movie, I think people would have cared, but it didn't really make any money at all. So the idea to continue the franchise through a direct sequel to John Carpenter's movie kind of fell through after that. But this movie also had a lot of problems behind the scenes where Amalgamated Dynamics, that's Woodruff and Tom Woodruff and Alex Gillis, who had worked with Stan Winston back in the day. Then they created their own practical effects house. They work on the alien movies. They've worked on Pumpkinhead. They've worked on pretty much anything that requires anything practical at some point. They were hired to do all these practical effects for the movie. The director was adamant about wanting practical effects, just like in John Carpenter's movie. And for some reason, after the movie was finished filming, the producers watched it and they were like, no, we're just going to turn everything into CGI. So they spent even more money after the fact to cover up the practical effects with really bad CGI effects. It looks terrible. It doesn't match up with anything from the original movie. You saw how the creature moved and what it, the way it did things. It was not like this freaking super fast like zombie running around, just breaking walls and just running around like a crazy person. No, it was slow. It would like creep up on you. It would never reveal itself in a crowd the way it does in this movie. There's one scene where a bunch of characters are sitting on a helicopter at the beginning, and a character sitting across from a bunch of them, all of a sudden he just kind of looks at them and goes, and his head cracks open and he turns out being an alien. They would never do that in a million years. So it kind of like ruins some of the shit set up in the original movie, but I don't think it's bad. It is still creepy. It is still disturbing. When you see that moment where that half-melted body thing that they found at the Norwegian station in the original movie came from, like who it was and what it was, it is one of the most disgusting things I think I've seen. Like, it made my stomach churn a little bit because it was so creepy to watch two people meld together. And it looked painful. And it's just, even the ending got completely changed. I remember they reworked the entire ending. It was supposed to go one way, and then they were like, nope, we're just going to turn it into a CGI fest. So I think the ending is kind of shitty. But for the most part, this movie is a really faithful recreation of everything that you saw in the aftermath in the original movie. They made sure that everything you saw was there in this and how it got there. There was like a random axe in the wall when Kurt Russell walks into the station in the original movie. They show you exactly where that came from and what led up to that. All that stuff is there. It's really attention to detail that really got me. But like I said, it got ruined in post and nobody saw it. Bad word of mouth got around. The 13th Floor. This came out in, 99, I want to say? Like I said, I don't know how this stuff sticks in my head, but it does. I think it was 99. This was like a little movie that slipped under the radar, I think, that summer. And I remember seeing a trailer for it, and the trailer didn't really make it look like anything other than a Matrix ripoff without the martial arts fighting. So I remember I went and saw one movie at the theater. I don't remember exactly what it was. It might have been Trekkies, the documentary. And then I was like, well, I still have, like 2 hours to spare. I'll go see that 13th Floor movie. Yeah, and I was like, holy shit, it's like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone. It is fantastic. There's like this like, in this, I don't know, is he scientist? I don't know what the fuck his job was. This guy creates like this alternate reality, virtual reality machine that you can live in. And the thing is like, in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, like if you die in reality, you die, or if you die in the fake reality, you die in real life? Is that what it was? It's been a while since I've seen it. I just remember Vincent D'Onofrio fucking owns the movie. Gretchen Mol is hot as shit. And I remember after seeing The Long Kiss Goodnight, I was like, oh, Craig Bierko got another job? I thought he was terrible as the villain in that movie. He was just kind of like, shitty as hell. And I was like, okay, but he's actually a pretty decent leading man. I was surprised. And then they cast him as Lister in The American Red Dwarf, and it basically ruined his career. Yeah, it's Westworld before Westworld. I need to watch it again, honestly. But I remember absolutely loving it, and I probably haven't seen this in 15 years. I bought it like cheap at a half-price books, and I've never watched it since I bought it. So I need to check it out again. I just remember loving the shit out of it. And my dad went and saw it based on my recommendation. He went and saw it in the theater, and he came back, and like that became like his favorite movie for like a year. Like he was always I remember I talked about it with Reservoir Dogs, who my dad saw Reservoir Dogs on video, and every single person that ever came over to the house, he would try to force them to watch Reservoir Dogs while they were there. That became that movie for him after that came out on home video. And then we have the three Thor films. We've got the original, we've got the Dark World, and Ragnarok. The Dark World and Ragnarok are in 3D. The original Thor was not a movie I was all that excited about because I didn't really know anything about the character other than the fact like the whole Norse mythology thing. So I went in there like as a completely blank slate. I knew Chris Hemsworth from two movies, from Cabin in the Woods and from the Star Trek reboot because he played Kirk's dad. And I was like, what is it with this guy? Why did he get this huge role and he has done basically nothing? Well, then you watch the movie and you're like, I get it now. He's actually pretty good. It's like it's almost like a coming of age story if you really think about it. Like Thor is like this completely arrogant jerk off at the beginning, and by the end of the movie he's learned self-sacrifice and that, you know, it's not all about you. Sometimes you gotta think about people other than yourself, and it's really cool. The romance between him and Natalie Portman's a little ridiculous, I think, but like I didn't expect it to be as funny as it was. I love Kat Dennings. I love the whole meow meow joke. I still do that every once in a while when someone starts talking about Thor. I'll go meow meow. I absolutely loved it. I was not prepared for it, and I was like, Idris Elba's the fucking man after watching this movie too. And Tom Hiddleston, never heard of him either. Perfect casting for Loki. It's hard to imagine that he actually auditioned to play Thor, and they were like, no, you'd make a better Loki. I cannot picture anyone else as Thor or anyone else as Loki. It's a fantastic film. Absolutely love it. And then we have Dark World, which I think is probably my second least favorite Marvel movie. Like this is like the second from the bottom. The worst Marvel movie to me is Age of Ultron. This is right above it. This is just slightly better. The villain is terrible. He's not explained. Nothing is, like, you don't get any development on him. He's just evil because he is. And the whole romance thing is even more ridiculous in this movie. The, like, reveal of Thor coming back and, like, seeing Natalie Portman's character for, like, what has it been, like, a year since the last time he saw her? The reveal should have been, like, this big build-up to it, and it's just kind of like, hey, I'm standing here, guys. How you doing? It's just bad. The action scenes suck. Even the music is freaking terrible. Like, it feels more like it's setting up the whole Infinity War thing with the inclusion of the ether being like one of the Infinity Stones and all that. And then when you watch all the extra scenes at the end, like the little setups for the other movies, yeah, that's exactly what this was. It's setting up other movies, and it doesn't feel like a complete movie to me. It's like it's terrible for me. I can't stand it. I watched that one. I think I watched a little bit of it in 3D because I didn't see it in 3D in the theater. I watched a little bit of 3D when I picked that up at Half Price Books. And even then, I didn't want to watch it all the way through. I just kind of like turned it off because I lost interest. But then we have Ragnarok, which redeems that movie completely. Yeah, they brought in, what's his name? Taika Waititi, who did We Live in the Shadows, or What We Do in the Shadows. And he basically turned the Thor franchise into like a disco movie. It's like all crazy colors and disco-y music and stuff. And he made it fun again. He made Thor fun again. Because that movie was a slog, The Dark World, for me. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Brought in Cate Blanchett to play Thor's evil sister. And she's just eating that shit up. I don't think she plays villains very often. And if she does, it's like in shitty-ass movies like Crystal Skull. She was a good villain in Hannah. But she's like Crystal Skull. Everything about Crystal Skull is kind of shitty. But they introduced a whole bunch of new characters. I love Valkyrie. I think she's a great character. I'm glad what they're doing with her character in the next Thor movie. I like the fact that they kind of mixed it up. I like having Thor get his hair cut off. Jeff Goldblum just rocks in this flick. He is so funny. And it's just like the comedy is kind of off the charts. The action scenes are great. The music is great. I love the fact that they finally found a way to work Immigrant Song into it because, you know, come on, that song is all about Norse stuff. You know, it's all about Vikings and shit. Of course, you should use it in these movies. They finally got permission to do it. And it sets up Infinity War perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Absolutely love this movie. It is, I think, way better even than the first movie, and I really like the first one. This is one of those 3D Blu-rays I had to get from Korea. I bought this at Target one day while I was shopping. I was like, oh shit, Ragnarok's out. Picked it up while I was in line. It was like an impulse buy thing. They have like the Blu-rays and stuff right at the front when you're checking out. I was like, shit, yeah, add that to my cart. And then I happened to find this on eBay being sold for basically the same price I paid for that Blu-ray brand new at Target. And I was like, oh, luckily I didn't open it and I have my receipt. I'm going to go take that shit back and order this. And that's exactly what I did. And the 3D in that movie is fantastic. And then we have a classic. We have Three Amigos with Steve Martin, Chevy Chase, and Martin Short. I can't remember his name. I don't know. Saw this at the Dollar Theater when I was a kid, and it is hysterically funny. It still holds up, I think. I got this at Half Price Books for like $1.50. I was just, when they reopened all the stores at the beginning of June, was that the beginning of June? The beginning of May? No, it was the beginning of June. I went in there, and this was sitting there, and I was like, yeah, you're coming home with me. I haven't watched this movie in like 15, maybe 20 years, and it's still funny as hell. Just the team up of the three of them. I'm not a big Chevy Chase fan, but yeah, that one, that works. I was trying to find more 3D Blu-rays to add to the collection, and I'm usually willing to buy movies that I thought were just okay, so I can watch them in 3D if I've never seen them in 3D before, just because I want to see them in 3D. So went on eBay, and there was a guy who had like this huge stack. It must have been like 40 3D Blu-rays, and there was like a drop-down menu on his listing, and it told you which ones were still available, and you can select the ones you want and pay for them separately. And he had a couple that I wanted. One of them was Silent Hill Revelations 3D, which I showed off last time, and the other one I picked up was the Three Musketeers 3D. This is directed by Paul Anderson, who did the Resident Evil films, and Event Horizon, and Mortal Kombat. And he did this in between Resident Evil, I think it was 4 and 5, I want to say. Yeah, he did this after Part 4, after Afterlife, which is my favorite Resident Evil film. Of course, freaking Mila Jovovich is in here, and she's doing weird martial arts stuff, which makes no sense. It has a weird cast. It has, what's his name? The guy that played Shaw in... Blah, blah, blah. Why do you not have the cast listed? Orlando Bloom's in it. Logan Lerman plays D'Artagnan. Oh, God, what is his name? Owen, something Owen? Feck. I cannot remember. I remember liking the cast. Oh, the guy that plays Volstagg in the Thor movies plays one of the Three Musketeers. The guy who played Dracula in Untold. He's one of the Musketeers too. I remember I rented it when it came out. Didn't see it in the theater in 3D at all. I kind of skipped it because I was kind of like, no. But I rented it and I was like, that was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't shit either. But I was like, all right. And that was why I was like, I'll watch it in 3D. And in 3D, it really works because I think it was the back-to-back making Resident Evil Afterlife and this in trying to like do as much 3D as he possibly can cram into one movie with both of them. When it came to them doing Resident Evil Retribution, the 5th Resident Evil movie, he kind of like went like, I'm so sick of this. It was still in 3D, but he barely did any 3D gags in it like he did in this and Resident Evil 4. So, yeah, Resident Evil Retribution kind of like doesn't hold up in 3D as much as this and Afterlife do. Still haven't opened this, but I actually saw this in the theater. It played at like one theater in the area, and that was only for maybe a week, and I was lucky to have been able to see it at all. And it's Titus. This is Titus Andronicus, the Shakespeare play made into a movie by Julie Tambor, who ended up doing The Tempest, and she was a stage director. She was the first person to direct The Lion King on stage. It's kind of fantastic. It's a strange revenge story, and she does it in a weird way where it's kind of like the movie takes place in this weird universe where the past and the future kind of are together. They kind of coexist because like some of the costuming is like real like Victorian era type stuff, Black Plague type era, and then some of it is like weird futuristic Matrixy looking stuff. It's bizarre. The music is kind of schizophrenic too. The performances are like sometimes they're like real low key, and then sometimes it's just people like freaking screaming at the screen and like basically drooling all over themselves. It's like these weird extremes, but I absolutely loved it. I had never read Titus Andronicus, like the play before, so I wasn't really familiar with it. So this was my first exposure to it, and after that I went and read it, and I was like, God damn. I give Julie Taymor props for making a movie out of that play and have it make any kind of sense, because it is just beyond craziness. And it's nuts. It's a fantastic movie. It's Anthony Hopkins, Jessica Lange, Alan Cummings is in this also. Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is in here. It has a decent cast. A lot of them were kind of nobodies at the time, but they ended up going on to other things. It's 3 hours long. If you like Shakespeare stuff and you're willing to sit there for 3 hours and watch people chew the scenery, I highly recommend it. This was released through Twilight Time in this super limited edition that only had like 1,000 or 1,500 copies made. And I jumped on it the moment it went on sale because I absolutely had to have it. Kind of like Batman Animated Series Part 30. Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, it's like that. It's just... You can tell that she was a stage director because it was like she had carte blanche to do whatever the hell she wanted. I don't think there was any expectations for that movie. She didn't really have a gigantic budget, so she just kind of did creative things to keep it visually interesting, and I think that was the choice she made. And it's just this really cool, like production design for the whole movie. Like it's interesting and it's gory as fuck, dude. I forgot to mention there is some shit going on in that movie that will like make your stomach turn when the revenge stuff kicks in. Holy shit. Then we have the reboot of Tomb Raider. Got this from Korea also because this was released in 3D. Saw it, I want to say, a month after it came out in theaters. I had made plans with some friends to go and see this opening weekend. I always, if a video game movie is released in theaters, it's like a rule of mine. I have to see it opening weekend. Even the UA Bowl movies, I saw all of those opening weekend. At least the ones that got theatrical releases. That was a mistake. So I made plans with some friends to see this, but one of them ended up having to go to the hospital the day that we were going to go see it, and I kept on like holding off until they said that she was ready to start going back out again. But by then the movie was on its way out of theaters, and I was like, "Is so and so okay to go see this movie? And if not, I hope you guys don't mind. We made plans to go see it. I'm just gonna go see it by myself." And they're like, "Just go see it. It's not a big deal." So I saw it like a month after it came out, and I really liked it because I did not like the Angelina Jolie movies. I thought they were just really badly made. The first one I think is beyond awful. I don't like anything about it at all. The second one I thought was bad too until the very end. I thought the movie had a very ballsy ending with the whole thing that happens with Gerard Butler's character. I thought that was interesting that they finally decided to do something with it. Show some acting. But this one is kind of like a combination of the reboot of the video game series, the younger Lara Croft. It's a combination of the first two games. There's situations and the main plot of the original game, but there's characters and stuff in here that's inspired from stuff from Rise of the Tomb Raider. And I really liked it. I thought the action scenes were really well done. I liked the casting. I love Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft. The whole... I can't remember the name of the Japanese woman that they're looking for. The mummy of that Japanese woman. I can't remember the name of her from the video game or whatever. But they changed the storyline a little bit, but I thought it worked well in the movie. And the puzzles that she has to do to get into the tombs, and there is actually a little bit of tomb raiding. It's kind of like the origin of the Tomb Raider thing, just like the first reboot game was. This one's, Crabbit, if you're going to watch any of them, just watch this one. This one is actually really well done. The bicycle thing at the beginning with the tag thing that she does in London is kind of stupid, but outside of that, it's pretty fantastic. I liked it a lot. And I was hoping that this was going to be the jumping off point for a whole franchise, and that's not going to happen because this came out. Why would you release a summer movie in, like, March? No. This is a summer movie, and nobody went and saw it, so it made no money, and the franchise is dead now, again. So it's sad that we won't get more adventures with Alicia Vikander because I thought she's great at the part. She's way better cast than Angelina Jolie ever was. And had to get this from Korea to get the 3D version, which actually works pretty well in 3D. James Bond, we got the Tomorrow Never Dies. This is the second movie that Pierce Brosnan was in as Bond, and I do not like this one at all. The whole movie's budget was provided by product placement. And I'm not kidding. They got like $110 or $115 million to make the movie, all based on the product placement within the movie. They spent... MGM and United Artists spent absolutely no money on this movie. And it's all about the product placement. It shows because it's like obvious. It's like every shot has something in it. It is really bad. And I don't like the villain. I like Michelle Yeoh as one of the Bond girls. They really teased up the fact that Terry Hatcher was playing a Bond girl, but she's only in it for like 10 minutes. But Michelle Yeoh is pretty awesome. Anything with Michelle Yeoh in it, I'll watch. She's a fantastic martial artist, and she's a really good actress too. And that was just a wasted opportunity. So I'm not a fan of that one. Definitely not a fan of this movie, but I found this used at half-price books for $5, and this is one of those movies that got post-converted into 3D years and years and years after the fact. I don't like this movie. I still haven't been able to finish this movie in 3D. You ready? Top Gun. I do not like this movie. I don't like it at all. I think it is incredibly hokey and embarrassing to watch, Every time somebody speaks, my eyes roll. It's just like stupid machismo shit. And it's just, I can't stand it. It's like everyone in this movie is an asshole. There was no likable characters in this movie. Except maybe Meg Ryan. When I first brought this home, I was like, okay, if I was ever going to own a copy of Top Gun, it was going to be this 3D conversion that they decided to do when 3D became huge. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And I only made it about 20 minutes into the movie before I turned it off. Again, I have never watched this movie from beginning to end in one sitting. It's always been watch a little bit here, watch a little bit there, watch a little bit there, and I guess I've seen the whole movie at some point. But yeah, the 3D looks fantastic. Any of the dogfight scenes that I did end up seeing when I was watching this in 3D look pretty awesome. It's just the movie that surrounds the dogfight scenes, I can't do it. I can't. You know what, though? Can't wait to see the sequel, though. And I am not shitting. I really want to see it because the way I heard the movie was made, I want to see it. The guy who directed it directed Tron Legacy and Oblivion. I'm going to be there. Total Recall, absolute freaking classic. My dad, I don't think, realized what he got himself into when he took my brother and I to see this in the theater. I'd already been watching horror movies at this time, but I don't think he was prepared for the absolute onslaught of gore that this movie was. Like, gunshots in this movie, it's like watching an anime where people, like, somebody will get slashed in a samurai anime and you'll see, like, this geyser come shooting out. People get shot in this movie, and it's like every drop of blood they had in their body comes out in one bullet hit. And then they get shot 13 more times. It's like, oh, where did this blood come from? Are they like extra, like, you know, bags of it in their pockets and shit? It's like, goddamn, does everyone walk around with like little bags of blood in their pockets just in case they get shot? All right, dude, I'll talk to you later, Charlie. Absolutely love this movie. It's one of my favorite Arnold movies. Based on a story by Philip K. Dick called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. Doesn't really follow the plot of the book very much. It's its own thing, but Paul Verhoeven always turns anything that he makes comes from a different medium, like Starship Troopers. It always turns into something different when he gets his hands on it. But it's fantastic, great practical effects. I don't think there was any CGI in this movie at all. I think it was all either opticals or stop motion if there was anything. But all the practical effects, I think Rob Bottin did all the stuff in this also. It is absolutely fantastic. It's just this real fast-paced, fun, overly violent, like sci-fi action movie. It's great. And Michael Ironside is a great villain. First time I ever saw Sharon Stone in a movie, and I was like, oh my god, she is amazing. And then Basic Instinct came out, and I was like, oh my god, I think I'm in love. Trading Places, Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy movie. I remember a lot of the early Eddie Murphy movies before Beverly Hills Cop were big bombs. But this was like his first big hit, and then Beverly Hills Cop like took him into the freaking stratosphere. This movie still holds up. It is super funny. Eddie Murphy, like everything that comes out of his mouth is gold. Dan Aykroyd plays like this pompous prick in this movie, and like by the end of the movie, he's kind of like learned his lesson. Jamie Lee Curtis is in this also, and she gets a little naked. And I think my jaw dropped on the floor the first time I saw her things. Yep. It's hysterical. I love it. This is one of those movies that I watch whenever I'm down, and it just immediately cheers me up. I'm surprised it still holds up, even though the blackfacey thing that happens at the end, not cool, but whatever. Not cool, bro. Okay, so you guys are prepared to see what my favorite movie of all time is. Because you're going to see it right now. It's the next movie up. You ready? You ready? Trainspotting. So, back in like the 80s and 90s, my selections of what movies I want to watch always were based on if I recognized someone in this movie from something I'd previously seen and I liked. So I knew nothing about this movie. I remember maybe reading about it in a movie magazine somewhere that it was like this huge hit in the UK and that it was coming out in the US. And then I saw a trailer for it and I was like, oh shit, that's the guy that played Zero Cool in Hackers. I'll probably go see that. So the weekend that it was released, a friend of mine who he was hanging out with another person who only wanted to go and watch like the big blockbuster movies. I was the friend that wanted to go see anything that was playing that looked interesting, even if it was like some indie movie from overseas. Peter, talking to you, man. So I was like, hey, I'm going to go see this Trainspotting movie from the UK. You want to come with me? He's like, yeah. I never get to see stuff like this in the theater. So we went and saw it, and it blew us away. It is like part comedy, part drama, part drug movie, part thriller. It's just, it has a little bit of everything. There's one scene in there that will make you frickin' cry. It has a little bit of everything, and I absolutely ate it up. I thought it was fantastically acted. I thought that the direction was super stylish for having like very little budget. It was the songs that were chosen for it was like watching a Quentin Tarantino movie from bands I never even heard of from overseas. And just, I absolutely fell in love with the cast. Like, they are just so, even though they're doing some shitty things, they're really likable, except for maybe Begbie. Begbie's just a shit. But, like, it's just a fantastic movie. Everything about it. It is so well paced. I couldn't get enough of it. And then I ended up seeing it in the theater, I want to say 3 times, and each with a different group of people. And Charlie was one of them, Epic Die Studio. I think I took him to go see it too. And it's just fantastic. I still watch it now, and I'm amazed that it holds up. This came out in 96, I want to say, and it's still awesome. And eventually, it got a sequel. So Trainspotting the movie is based on a novel by Irvine Welsh, who is a Scottish author. And I tried reading the book, and half the book is written in like that Scottish slang, and you need a dictionary to know what the fuck they're saying in that book. It is so hard to read. Luckily, there's like a glossary, I think, in the back of the book that helps out a little bit, but I couldn't really get through it. I couldn't even get halfway through it. But there was a prequel to Trainspotting that he wrote called Skag Boys, and then there was a sequel that he wrote called Porno. And it's like this is sort of based on Porno. It's basically, let's catch up with those characters, 20 years down the line? Yeah, because that came out in 96, this came out in 2016. Yeah, so this is like, let's catch up with all these characters 20 years down the line. What are they doing now? And while it doesn't quite have the same energy level, which is one of the reasons I really like Trainspotting to begin with, is because it's just constantly moving. There's always something going on, even when it's like overly dramatic or whatever. This one is just like its characters. It's grown up and it's old. They're 20 years older. They're a little slower. It starts off with Ewan McGregor's character having a freaking heart attack while he's exercising. And it's like, okay, you're setting this thing up very well. And these kids aren't going to be running around like they were in the first movie doing all the crazy shit. They're older, a little wiser. So yeah, the pacing is a little slower. But while I didn't like that when I first saw it, when I watched it again, I was just like, that's not the point of this movie. This movie is to show that these people are growing up and they're older now. And it's just as entertaining, I think, as the first movie. I think it's just the first one is still better. Just everything about the first one is still. This one's not really fun to watch. It's. I still say you should watch it. It's super well made. There's a couple of scenes that have the feel of the first movie, but that's not the point of this one. This one isn't to wow you with visuals. This one's to tell you a story about growing old. So I hope that 20 years after this, in 2036, we get a term. I'm surprised they called this T2. We get a T3 where they show these people, in their 60s. So it's interesting, and it ends in a way that they could possibly make another one if they wanted to. So that was a Danny Boyle. Those two are Danny Boyle movies, and then here's another one, and it's called Trance. I knew absolutely zilch about this movie when it was being released. Ain't It Cool News, the website, is always doing like these, hey, win a ticket to see a sneak preview of a film that's coming out later, and I won a lot of them that happened in Chicago. I won a lot. I want to say at one point every other week I was seeing a sneak preview of some movie through them. So I saw that they were doing one in Chicago for this movie called Trance, and I was like, oh, that's a Danny Boyle movie? Oh, sure, I'll throw my name into to that one. And I won 2 tickets to go see it. My girlfriend at the time and I went and saw it, and I don't think we were prepared for it. It's fast paced like a Danny Boyle movie, but this is him trying to do an erotic thriller, and I think I said this in the review that I wrote on my blog that is still available if you want to check it out. It's called Geektastic Film Reviews. I said I've never had a movie play or manipulate me the way this movie did. it was like I was loving it, and then I was hating it. And then I was loving it, and then I was hating it. And then at the end, I was really loving it. And I was like, did he do that intentionally? Did he, like, have certain things happen in his script to absolutely make you hate every single character and then fall in love with them all over again, over and over again? It was kind of amazing that worked, because I was talking to other people that were at the screening, and they all said the exact same thing. Like, there was one point where I almost wanted to walk out. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh. James McAvoy, all right. James McAvoy, a very naked Rosario Dawson. There's one scene where she does a certain thing with some clippers, and I was like, what's happening? What's that then? Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Yep, that's James McAvoy. So the plot behind this is McAvoy works at an art gallery where they, like, auction off pieces of art. There's this really expensive painting that's going up for auction. 3 guys come in and try to rob the joint. McAvoy takes the painting that they're trying to steal and hides it somewhere. And while he's in the process of hiding it, or after he's hidden it, one of the thieves hits him over the head so hard that he goes into a coma, and he can't remember where the painting is. Turns out he was working with those thieves. He was just making it look like he was trying to hide it so he wouldn't lose his job. And he had hidden it in a specific place for these people to go and find later. And they hit him so hard to, like, make it look like he was trying to do his job, hide the painting, that he doesn't remember where he put it. So he goes to a therapist who, like, is all about, like, memory regression. And it starts to turn to this: is what we're seeing real? Is something we're seeing in his mind? It's like, what's going on here? And there's all this crazy shit that happens. And it has a really bizarre twist at the end that at first I was like, no. And then it happens, and they start to explain things. I was like, oh. My girlfriend at the time, yeah, it is, isn't it? We saw a lot of movies together. What can I say? Anyway, check out Trance if you haven't already. Be prepared for a lot of nudity and clippers. You'll see it. When it happens, you'll be like... Anyway, here's a classic from the 80s. I used to watch this on cable all the time. It's called Trancers. This is by Empire Pictures, the precursor to Full Moon Films. Tim Thomerson. This is trying to be the Terminator, but a super, ultra, low-budget Terminator. There's no robots or anything like that. It's about time travel, the way Terminator is. So the whole plot is in, like, the future. It's, I want to say, like 100 years in the future. There's this guy named Whistler who can hypnotize people into doing his bidding, and they become kind of like these mindless zombies that he can control that they call Trancers. There's a squad of police that all they do is hunt Trancers, and that's Tim Thomerson's job. He's a Trancer hunter. And he finds out that Whistler has been captured and he's kind of in a coma. And they're like, well, he finds out that the reason he's in a coma is he found a way to transport his consciousness back through his family lineage to the 80s. So now he is inhabiting one of his ancestors in the 80s. His consciousness is inhabiting that person's body. But in the future, his body is basically this lifeless husk. So Jack Death, that's Thomerson's name, has to do the exact same thing and go and transport his consciousness back into one of his ancestors' bodies in the 80s to hunt him in the past, because what he's doing in the past is killing all of the ancestors of the people who run the country in the future. So they'll never exist, kind of like in the Terminator. And it's like all these weird adventures that he has in the 80s in, like, LA. And Helen Hunt's in it. It was like one of her first movies, and she's really kind of charming in it. It's really fun. And this spawned 5 sequels of varying qualities. I'm gonna have to put the stream on pause for a few minutes. I'm having a little bit of an issue again. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm really sorry. IBS is not a fun thing. I will be back momentarily, so stay tuned. I will be here. I'm not going anywhere. Let me bring up the video that you all love. Oh, that's just gonna be the stream. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I thought I'd be able to hold off until the end of the stream, but when you gotta go, you gotta go. You've never seen a fat person run as fast as I did. So, yeah, Trancers is a fun little twist on the whole Terminator storyline. Yeah, like I said, there was 5 sequels. The second one, no. I want to say the only one I would say to watch is part 3. It's called Death's... Was it? No, it's not The Return of Jack Death. I can't remember what the subtitle's called. It's been forever. It's like Death's Back or something. Anyway. So now we're getting into Transformers territory, everybody. Hope you're ready. First movie is the Transformers the movie from the 80s, the animated film that came out like right after season 2 of the television show. They were making this when the first season was still being shown. I mean, they knew in advance that they were going to make a movie out of this. And what's the point of this movie? To make kids throw away all the toys that they've been buying for the past 2 or 3 years in order to make way for all the new wave of Transformers that were coming out that they introduced in this film. I saw this in the theater opening weekend. This was like one of those movies where if I didn't see it in the theater opening weekend, I was going to lose my shit. I was such a huge Transformers fan when I was a kid. Like, I was one of the people at my grade school who, like, introduced Transformers to everybody. And all of a sudden, everybody loved the Transformers because I was one of the first kids to get... I got Sideswipe as a gift, like, right when it came out. My mother bought me a Sideswipe and she bought my brother some G.I. Joe thing. And I brought it to school, and all of a sudden, everybody had to have a fucking Transformer because of me. Yeah, I know, right? No, Cabot, no. So, yeah, this is the movie that broke the hearts of little kids all across America. I cried like someone had just shot my goddamn dog when Optimus dies. I lost my... we're talking like ugly crying. And like my brother's looking at me like, the fuck is wrong with you? Granted, he was like only 4. He didn't quite grasp the fact that Optimus was dead, but I did. I totally did. So yeah, what the whole plot is there, honestly, there is no plot. It's just, we're going to kill every single Transformer that you own right now. And then show you all these new Transformers so you can run out of this movie theater and buy them immediately. It was a marketing tool. Funny thing is, it's actually a really fun movie. They got a really decent voice cast to do it. They got Judd Nelson playing Hot Rod and Rodimus Prime. Leonard Nimoy plays Galvatron, who's the new Megatron. Lionel Stander, who was in movies back in like the frickin' like 30s and 40s, is playing Cup. Robert Stack plays Ultra Magnus. There was a couple others. Orson Welles plays Unicron, who is the big bad in the movie, the real big bad, the giant Transformer planet, which has a toy out right now, and it looks absolutely fantastic, but I am not going down that rabbit hole of collecting Orson Welles. Yeah, it blew my mind a little bit. It is so well animated. It is like, the action is pretty good. There's a couple times where it's hard to see what's going on. It kind of fluctuates quality-wise, too, because sometimes it'll be like that super detailed anime type of stuff, like that, the original attack on that planet at the very beginning of the movie, before the credits, where you see what Unicron does, and he eats that one planet. All that animation is like that top-notch Japanese anime quality that you would normally see at the opening credit sequence of a TV show that was from Japan, like Transformers or G.I. Joe or whatever. And then like the movie itself would kind of like a little less quality as it went along, but every once in a while that kind of high quality stuff would pop back up, especially during the big fight at the end with Unicron as a robot. It's awesome. It's a passing of the torch, if you really want to go there. Passing of the torch between wave 2 of the show, and over the wave 2 of the characters to wave 3. But yeah, Galvatron is a great character. I love the music in this movie by Vince DiCola, who also did the music for Rocky IV. It's like all this cheesy synth rock, and it's fantastic. That scene where Unicron is like bartering with Megatron, and he's like, "Oh, I'll give you a new body and new troops if you work for me." And Megatron's like, bitch, please. I work for myself. Megatron self-employed. And then he's like, okay, fine. I'll just kill you then. He's like, no. Second thought. I'll do what you said. Let's do it. That music they play in that scene where you see Megatron being like taken apart and put back together again as Galvatron, I think that's one of the coolest pieces of music. That Unicron theme itself is kind of fantastic. I listen to that shit in my car all the time. Yeah, there's a weird collection of songs. Like Weird Al's Dare to Be Stupid during the Junkion scene. It's kind of weird, but at the same time, it kind of works. The cheesy ass Stan Bush songs. You got Dare, which I think is kind of a cool song. They used it in Glow, the TV show that's on Netflix about the female wrestlers. When that song played, I lost my fucking shit watching that show. I was like, and I immediately had to like go on Facebook and be like, oh my god, this is the best show ever. They just played Dare by Stan Bush in the Transformers movie. But yeah, his the Touch song is quite possibly one of the cheesiest fucking things to ever come out of the 80s. But I love it. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite things ever. I watch this all the time. It's kind of funny watching this. Like, I had a friend who he didn't grow up with Transformers. He was a little too, I think he was born like 10 years after I was, I want to say. He didn't grow up with Transformers, didn't know a whole lot about it. He knew about the Michael Bay Transformers stuff. So when I was like, hey, before that Transformers movie comes out, let's watch this. You must see this. And he just didn't get it. He's just like, this is stupid. What is this? I'm like, it's a toy commercial. What the fuck you think it is? It's kind of amazing. It's one of my favorite movies ever. And then we have the Bayformers. Okay, so by the time the original Michael Bay Transformers movie, the first one that came out in 2007 came out, I was kind of a lapsed Transformers fan. I still thought it was cool, but I wasn't nearly as into it as I was back then. I remember I was excited to see it because I thought the trailer looked really awesome. And we got this huge group of people to go and see it, like the night before it opened, when they started doing that whole Thursday show thing. I remember the premiere date kept shifting back and forth between days over the course of this 1 week. It kept moving back and then went forward and then back again. So like no one really knew when it was coming out, but then I ended up getting tickets for it. I think there was like 6 or 7 of us that went and saw it. Charlie was one of them. Epic Die Studio was one. And every single one of us absolutely loved it. We're like, the only criticism I ever heard that first time we saw it was my friend Marin's wife was like, I love it, but why does Optimus Prime have to... Why, when he transforms, is it so slow? I'm like, he's a fucking truck. He's not a sports car. That takes a while. I'm like, trying to make sense of a robot from space that turns into a truck. And I still think the first one is pretty good. I enjoyed a lot. I think the action scenes are great. I absolutely love Steve Jablonsky's musical score. I thought the special effects were fantastic. They got I thought that they were just going to change everything about it, and they did change the look of the characters, which seemed to like make every single person in the country get butthurt. It didn't bother me at all because you know that had to happen, because it's not going to be this overly simplistic thing like it was in the cartoon. This is not a cartoon. This is a movie. You know, it has to look different. So I had no problem with what Optimus looked like. I had no problem with Bumblebee or any of the other characters. I had problems with their personalities a little bit. Like, was it Jazz? Why did he talk like a hip-hop guy? Why did Michael Bay always have to have the robots talk with accents? Why couldn't they just talk? You know? There always had to be, like, some weird nationality thing going on. And it's almost like he was making fun of him at the same time. But, like, hearing, was it Jazz going like, let's kick it, boys. What's happening here, bitches? You know, shit like that. It's like, what are you doing? But I thought I'd only seen Shia LaBeouf, I think, in one movie at this point, and that was Charlie's Angels 2. And I was like, yeah, he's all right. But I really liked him in this movie. Like, he carried the movie. Like, he just got charisma up the ass. I love this. I loved it a lot. I thought it was fantastic. It's fun. It's sometimes silly and stupid and insensitive, but that's Michael Bay. I think it still holds up. I like this one a lot. Saw this in the theater like 6 freaking times. Yeah, Peter Cullen, that was the master stroke that they brought Peter Cullen back to play Optimus Prime. I don't think anyone else could have done it. I wish they brought back Frank Welker to play Megatron also, but from what I understand, his voice is like not like it used to be, so it would not have sounded like the Megatron we remember, the same way that Peter Cullen could still do the Optimus voice, even though he does sound a lot older. But casting, what's his name? The guy who played Agent Smith in the Matrix movies as Megatron, I thought was a pretty good choice. Having Bumblebee be mute, I did not like. And I did not like that they kept that going through all the movies. But anyway. Then we have Revenge of the Fallen, the second movie, which you have no idea. Hugo Weaving, thank you very much. You have no idea how excited I was for this movie. So much so that I called out of work the Friday it was released so I can go and see a midnight showing on Thursday. And a friend and I went and saw it, and like... You know, Stendhal syndrome? Or what's the thing when you get kidnapped and you fall in love with your kidnappers? That's what happened with me with this movie. I freaking loved this the first time I saw it. Like that midnight show. I absolutely was like, oh my god, I cried at one point. Like, legit, like, type of tears. Stockholm syndrome? Yeah, that's it. And like, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, fuck the first movie. Revenge of the Fallen's the shit. And then I loved it so much, I convinced the friend that I saw at the midnight show with, I convinced him to go and see it with me again that Friday on the IMAX. Because I heard that scenes were shot specifically with IMAX cameras, you know, to take advantage of that format. So I'm like, fuck it, let's go see it again. Let's go see it on the IMAX. And he was like, oh, okay. And while I was watching it that second time, I was like, this is so bad. Why are there these racist caricatures in this movie? Why are those twins talking like they're... Why are they talking like that? Why are they saying these things? Why do people think this is funny? Why does Devastator have wrecking balls as balls? Who thought this was a good idea? What? This is shit. So, like, within the space of 12 hours, I went from absolutely loving Revenge of the Fallen to absolutely hating it. Like I said, it's Stockholm Syndrome. It's just like... This... in the movie's defense, I mean, the only thing I will say is this was made during the writer's strike that was going on at the time. There was a half-written script. There was like, I think I'm going to say like an outline, but the script was never finished. So based on that outline that they had, which was just a basic description of what was going to happen as plot, they had to work around it and like ad-lib lines and come up with shit on the fly, which is why there's that female that's like stalking Shia LaBeouf, that's like a female transformer that transforms from a robot into a girl. It looks like Syl from Species. Yeah, Megan Fox is just like sticking her ass in the camera every chance she got and lets Michael Bay basically get up in that. I was like, I don't know what she was thinking. It's just dumb. It's just, you can tell it was made up on the fly. Like, point A does not lead to point B and point B does not lead to point C. It's just kind of like all over the place. And then they had to work in the whole thing with Shia LaBeouf losing his shit and crushing his hand in a car accident while they're making the movie. And all of a sudden he's got this gigantic freaking bandage all over his hand that comes out of nowhere. It's just like a mess. It's a huge mess. There's lots of racist shit and like unfunny humor. It is so bad. So bad. But then we have Dark of the Moon. Now I understand why people have problems with this movie. It is just kind of all over the place also. There's a lot of stupid humor. But what you don't understand is, in my case, movies like this do not get shot in Chicago. Okay? Parts of movies get shot in Chicago, like scenes. Okay? They might use Lower Wacker Drive to shoot part of Batman Begins, the Tumbler chase. Okay, fine. They used part of Lower Wacker Drive. That was 3 days. They might shoot something for Contagion. They shot it where I work, actually. They shot there for 2 weeks. Whatever, fine. They do not take over Chicago, the entire city of Chicago, for 3 months. That never happens, which is what happened with this movie. I came home from work one day. I used to get off at like 1:30 in the afternoon. I got home at like 2:30, and I can see the Sears Tower from my back porch. I live maybe 3-4 miles away from the Sears Tower. I can see it in a clear day. I can see it perfectly fine from my porch. I hear this explosion echo coming from the city. I live outside the city. I live in Chicago, but I live in one of the suburb areas that's still considered part of Chicago, but it's not downtown. And I look, and I see these 3 helicopters circling around the Sears Tower, and all of a sudden I see all these little dots dropping out of them. They were filming the parachuting scene, where all the helicopters are getting destroyed by, Starscream? And all the people, all the soldiers are like dropping out of the helicopters and parachuting and doing the whole squirrel suit thing. I saw them film that from my back porch. I was filming my web series, my sketch comedy web series that is still on YouTube. If you guys want to watch it, just look up Winter in Construction. I went downstairs with downtown with my cinematographer to get shots of well-known buildings and stuff in Chicago for an opening credit sequence that I was going to make. And as we're driving through, there's all this traffic because they're filming Transformers 3 2 blocks away. All of a sudden, this giant freaking black truck comes barreling past us and like cutting through traffic. And we're looking at it, we're like, how does a truck that big, like, how does somebody buy, like, if you live in the city, if you live in downtown, why would you buy a truck that big? And then my cinematographer friend looks at me and goes, that's Ironhide. And we're like, you're right. He's doing a loop around the block to go back to shoot again. And then we can see when we're passing streets, we see Bumblebee driving around. There was a scene that Bumblebee was driving through a street, and some stupid cop decided to ignore the fact that those streets were closed off and barreled through one of the barricades and hit and destroyed one of the Bumblebee cars, one of the Camaros. I read about that like the day after that happened. You have no idea how it took over Chicago. It like ruled our lives for like 3 months straight. Like it was just interfering with everything. Traffic was at a standstill every day for 3 months. It sucked. But on the flip side, we got to watch a gigantic major motion picture getting made on the streets, which was awesome. So when this movie came out, I was super excited. I'm like, I want to see what made me, or took me an extra hour to get home for every day. What were they doing down there that made me get home an hour later than I normally do? And like it blew me away. I was like, holy shit. The last like hour of the movie takes place in Chicago, and it's watching Chicago get effed in the A. Yeah, the story's stupid. Another more stupid humor from Michael Bay. I don't understand the whole Ken Jeong thing, why he thought that thing with his neck was funny. But the whole last hour makes this movie for me. It's just all the memories of all the shit that it caused, how many problems it caused while they were shooting in Chicago, just turned into this big epic action thing at the end of the movie. Just puts a smile on my face. That scene where Shia LaBeouf is in, I don't think he's in Bumblebee. He's driving with Epps, with blah, 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 blah. I can't remember his name. From the Fast and the Furious movies. I can't remember his name. Anyway, when Shia LaBeouf is like driving into Chicago after the Decepticons have already taken over, and you see in the background, you see Chicago like crumbling, and there's people standing around. No, they're hurt, they're crying, they're like, covered in dust and blood and whatnot. I got choked up, man. I was just kind of like, oh. It just, the fact that I saw this movie getting made, I absolutely love it. I do. I love this one more than the first movie. I can understand. But like I said, it's a Chicago thing. And yeah, it's cool. And this is the IMAX 3D version that I found. And this movie still looks fantastic in 3D. Not as good as one that's coming up later, but it still looks pretty awesome. So then we have the fourth movie, Age of Extinction, which is also the IMAX 3D version. And I thought Michael Bay was going to leave the franchise after he did the third movie. He said he wanted to move on to other things, but I guess they threw a lot of money. Like DreamWorks threw a ton of money at him, and he came back again. But this time he kind of had to start over. Shia LaBeouf didn't want to do them anymore. Megan Fox wasn't in them anymore. Whoever played Shia LaBeouf's girlfriend in the movie didn't want to come back. None of the actors wanted to come back. So they had to start over with Mark Wahlberg. And I thought it was strange that Mark Wahlberg wanted to be in like part 4 of an ongoing franchise about toys. But I thought he was pretty cool. I mean, this one is stupid. It is dumb. It is ridiculous at times. But watching this one, it was kind of like reminding me of when I used to play with the toys when I was a kid and the stupid like adventures that they would have. It just, for some reason, it just did it for me. I understand it's retarded as hell. I know I'm not supposed to use that word, but it's dumb. It's stupid. I don't like a lot of the characters. I don't like the Wahlberg's daughter. I don't like her boyfriend. But I think it's just entertaining. It's just still stupid, simple entertainment with giant robots beating the shit out of each other, and the freaking Dinobots show up out of nowhere. I want to say I really did like the villain. What was his name? Lockdown. I really liked him as the villain. I thought he was darker than Megatron. He didn't mess around. Like, Megatron was always just doing stupid shit. And just like, Lockdown was just like, no, I'm gonna kill you. So that's kind of the reason why I enjoy this one. I know it is stupid. I understand it is stupid. I know it sucks. I just get a kick out of it. Which brings us to The Last Night. I talked about this in my 3D Blu-rays you need to watch on the PSVR. The first one. I think it was the first one. Yeah, I think it was the first one. So this is the 3D version of this also. I saw this movie opening day on the 3D, in 3D, on the IMAX. And the 3D of the movie, yeah, we still are. The 3D in this movie blew my mind. This is some of the best 3D I have ever seen. I think it took 3 movies for Michael Bay to finally understand that he needed to friggin' calm down his normal hyper-editing style. And he learned it with this movie. Finally, you could see everything. He filmed way back, so you get these great views of the scenery. And when action is happening, it's filmed not in close-up. It's so far back you can see every single punch and kick and sword swipe, blah, 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 tongue-tied. It's just that it happens in one of the worst movies I've ever seen. My jaw was just dropping every single time somebody said something or some stupid new plot point was introduced, and I was just like, what? The Earth is Unicron? What? This movie is beyond stupid. It is ridiculously stupid. It is one of the, like I said, it's one of the worst movies I think I've ever seen. It's just weird that I have to sit through this shit show to watch some of the best 3D I've ever seen in my life. Wahlberg and the little girl. The trailers made it look like that little girl was going to be like Sam's replacement, Shia LaBeouf's replacement. They made it look like it was going to be about her teaming up with Mark Wahlberg, so we have like another kid character to follow around. They even made those trailers where it's like the little girl's talking to the camera. She's talking to the audience, and he was like, yeah, what does it mean to be tough? And then she like describes some things, and she's like, yeah, I'm tough. And then the trailer would end. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so they cast this really precocious kid to play this. No, she's in the very beginning of the movie for about 5-10 minutes, and then she randomly shows up at the very end of the movie out of nowhere to participate in the finale. This sucks. This is so bad. The only thing I can say outside of the 3D that worked is the Optimus versus Bumblebee fight was pretty cool. And the big finale with them trying to take out the Quintessa, or whatever the hell her name was in this movie. The big finale in 3D, it just looks phenomenal. This is also one of the reasons why one of the things I hate the most about this movie is all the freaking retconning they did. In the 4th movie, they set up the Quintessons, which were those organic beings that were kind of like seeding Earth in the beginning of the 4th movie with the metal that would become like what they would harvest to make the Transformers. And then instead of following through with that idea, they boiled them all down to one robot female character named Quintessa. And because they're like, oh, we need one bad guy to fight in this movie, and it's her. And it's just like, why would you introduce that if you're just gonna like change everything? And then like Bumblebee came to Earth in like the first movie. He came to Earth like right before the first movie started. No, turns out he's been to Earth since like World War II. And he participated in World War II. Yeah, it sucks. It is so bad. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. Then we have 2 of the 3 Transporter films. I saw the first one in the theater, and I really didn't like it. I don't know why. This was like one of the first Statham starring movies I ever saw, and I was really excited because I liked him in The One, that Jet Li movie where it was like multiple Jet Lis fighting each other, and Ghost of Mars. And I was like, oh, cool. I like that guy. He seems pretty cool. Let's check out his first starring role. I was like, that was shit. And then the second one came out, and I had no intention of seeing the second one. But my parents wanted to see it, and they're like, hey, we'll take you to go see the Transporter 2. We're going to go see it. And I was like, it's a free movie, whatever, fuck it, I'll go. If I don't have to pay for it, I'll see it. And I really liked this one. It was just this crazy, nonsensical French action movie that has Jason Statham doing ridiculous things, not only with a pair of guns, but with his car. His car defies the laws of physics in this movie. I saw Transporter first. I did, personally. So I liked this one so much, I went back and watched the first movie, and I was just kind of like, well, if I like this, how could I not like the first movie? So I went back and watched this. I was like, I don't know what I was expecting, but it's fun. It's really fun. I was like, okay, I was stupid. So yeah, just really dumb action movies written by Luc Besson, just like I said when I was talking about Taken. Luc Besson wrote all 3 of the Transporter films, let someone else direct them for him. That's basically what he did in the basically throughout the entire 2000s. He got back into directing, I think, in the late 2000s. But yeah, they're just really fun movies. And then there was the third one, which is another one of those movies I think is just like one of the worst freaking things I've ever seen. If you ever see the name Olivier Megaton as being the person who directed a movie, I highly recommend you avoid watching that movie. Every single movie I've seen that guy has made has been a shit show. He directed the third Transporter. He directed some movie that just came out recently that bombed horribly too. I can't remember what it was though. It was really recent, but he's still making movies, and they are every one of them that I've seen. I think Colombiana was one of them, and that I thought was shit. Yeah, avoid them. Okay, here's a fun one. Romeo and Juliet. Which one had the bad girl lingerie? That's the second movie. Yep, she's on the cover of the second movie. Yeah, there she is, like dodging Statham's dick. His fireballs. Yeah, she sings a song in the movie too. One of the songs they play in the movie is sung by that actress, who I think was a model. But Romeo and Juliet. You know the Guardians of the Galaxy movies? The guy that directed that movie, James Gunn. This was the first movie he ever worked on because he wrote this for Troma. Troma is like that schlock company that made Toxic Avenger and all that shit. It's not a good movie at all, really. It's ambitious. It's trying to be like this Troma version of Romeo and Juliet, obviously. But still trying to keep in all the weird sex stuff and the gore and the crassness and all that. It's just weird combination of things that combine to make something that's really watchable and kind of like guilty pleasure-esque. Fired at gonorrhea much? Statham's fire crotch. Yep. I swear to God, look at it. I mean, look at that poster. It's like, it is his dick. It is his crotch. It's just shooting flames. Check out my fire crotch. I'm going to remember that shit. But yeah, Romeo and Juliet's a lot of fun. I can't say the same thing about a lot of Troma's movies. They're really hit or miss for me. Some of them are really entertaining, like Toxic Avenger 4, Citizen Toxie, is way smarter and well made than a Troma movie should ever be. It is like clever in ways I never expected, while also having a woman beat another woman to death with her breasts at the same time. So take that as you will. But yeah, this is one of their better films. James Gunn wrote it, and he's in it too. He has like a small little role. Here's one of my other favorite movies of all time. I have a shrine to this movie in my other room. I should probably take a picture of it and post it online somewhere at some point. But it's starting to spread out throughout my living room. I'm starting to amass so much stuff. But we're talking Tron. I mean, come on. Duh. Saw this movie in the theater the day it was released. Where I was visiting my family in Ohio. And my cousin... one of my cousins and her boyfriend at the time, who she's now married to, took me to see this. And I was super excited because Atari 2600 was my life at the time this came out. And the trailers made it look like it was going to be this big movie about video games. Like, just about video games. Like, no story, nothing, just about video games. So she took me to see this in the theater, and I didn't really like it. I was kind of disappointed. Didn't understand what they were talking about half the time. Didn't understand what was going on. It just seemed like, even as a 7-year-old, I was just kind of like, I don't get it. Was it 8? When did this come out? 83? I think this was 83. Yeah, 83. So I was like 8, maybe 7 or 8. So My dad wanted to see it because my dad is a huge sci-fi, or was a huge sci-fi nut. So we came back home to Illinois, and my dad's like, I want to go see that Tron movie. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, I love the action scenes and stuff. When it had to do with video gamey things, I was like, aha, this is amazing. Everything else, I was like, what's a RAM? What are they talking? What's memory? High clearance memory? What does that even mean? I didn't know computer terms or jargon like that. So my dad's like, I want to see it too. So he took me and my brother and my mother to go see it in the theater. And when I saw it the second time, I was like, my expectations were in check. I knew that it wasn't going to be all about video games, and I paid more attention instead of fanboying out over video games while I was watching it. And I was like, I didn't get it completely. Like I said, the jargon stuff made no sense, but I had fun with it the second time. And then it came out on home video, and my parents rented it, made a copy of it, and I watched it like every day, sometimes twice a day, like for years. Like it was just crazy. I watched this so much when I was a kid. I must have said I watched this like within the space of a year. I probably watched this like 60 times. It was crazy. And then kind of like didn't really do anything. I had my own copy of it. Didn't really watch it a whole lot. Bought the DVD of it. Went and saw it in the theater. The museum, was it the planetarium in Chicago was going to be playing this like on a big screen, for a night's or one evening. And we went, and they were showing the freaking VHS tape. They were projecting the VHS tape, which was in Pan and Scan. And I was like, if I knew that this is what they were going to do, I wouldn't have come. I would have suggested I bring my own DVD player and my DVD, and they could show the widescreen version of it, dumbasses. Ugh. But absolutely, it's still like one of my favorite films of all time. And now that I get what they're talking about, this movie seemed very ahead of its time, which is why probably nobody wanted to see it back in the day, because nobody got any of those terms. Now that shit is every day. Back in 1983, who had a computer in their house? Like seriously, who did? You had to be rich. Maybe you had an Apple IIe, something like that. Maybe I know one of my friends on my street did back then, but like nobody I knew outside of my friend Kent back then had a computer. No one could really afford it. They were huge, and they didn't do shit. You could barely play a video game on it back then. So nobody understood what was going on in this movie. Nowadays you watch it and it's like old hat. Everybody knows what the hell RAM is and memory and all that kind of crap. So everybody gets it now. But I think it's just a really creative movie. First major use of CGI. Not trying to be lifelike at all, but just trying to at least make something that looks video game-esque, or at least in high definition. But it's fun. The characters are all likable. Flynn is a great character, which is why I was surprised, or I was not surprised that they decided to make Flynn the main character of the sequel instead of Tron himself. It's just really fun. It's really fast-paced. Like I said, the action scenes are really fun. The music is great. I love the way that Wendy Carlos, who did the music for the movie, when the movie is taking place outside of the computer world, the music is symphonic with little touches of synth in it. But when they're in the computer world, the majority of the music is synth with little touches of orchestra in it. You can hear it the best example of the mostly synth with just a little bit of orchestral stuff is when they steal the Solar Sailor. And as they exit the building that the Solar Sailor is being stored in, you see Sark's carrier coming out. And the music they play there starts off it sounds like it's this big synth thing, like an action motif type of thing. And then all of a sudden you hear this little orchestra kick in toward the end of it. And I'm like, that's kind of clever. Didn't get that as a kid. Get it now as an adult because I love film scores. But absolutely love everything about the movie. And it's kind of creepy at the same time. When Tron takes out Sark and rips the top of his head off with his disc, that disturbed me quite a bit when I was a kid. When you see him lurch back and his brains are spilling out. And then you see his eyes disappear. It was no, that's gross. But that's awesome. And I was so happy we ended up getting a sequel. Now there's talk of a third movie. Hopefully, Disney's it's time to make another Tron movie. Hopefully it won't take another 30 years for them to get around to doing that like they took between the original and the sequel. Getting towards the end, guys. Tropic Thunder. This came out right after Robert Downey Jr. hit it big with Iron Man. All of a sudden he was a household name and everybody loved him and everything he did. This is a very funny parody of action movies and action stars. So you got Robert Downey Jr., Ben Stiller, and Jesus, what's his name? Jack Black. And yeah, at first glance, the whole thing about Robert Downey Jr. being in blackface for the whole movie, when you first see it, you're like, are you serious? I mean, I'm the guy, I'm the dude playing the dude disguised as another dude. But you see that he's parodying like those method actors who will do stupid shit like that for their craft. You know, I don't know. Every person that I've talked to who is, like of color, has absolutely no problem with Robert Downey Jr. in blackface in this movie because everybody knows what the joke is. And Jack Black is playing like the drug-addled movie star, and Ben Stiller is playing the guy who's like just stupid. Like everyone kind of views Tom Cruise being as incredibly stupid, and all that. But in actuality, Tom Cruise is probably one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. Yeah, Tom Cruise playing the producer is one of the... They were going to give him his own movie as that character. That would have been awesome. I laugh so hard. Knowing what I know about filmmaking and stuff like that, some of the stuff that happens in this movie, like, I was dying. But other people are looking at me like, that wasn't funny. I'm laughing. I'm, like, crying at times. I was laughing so hard. Like, I have a can of booty sweat in the other room. Look, I got that can of booty sweat back in Da Nang. Anyone want to bust a nut bar? Like, I love it. I love this movie. I think it's a fantastic parody of action movies and action stars. It's hysterically funny. Like, Jack Black, after he, like, finds that big table of heroin and sticks his face in it and then starts running around in his underwear screaming, "Don't judge me," I die every time. Tom Cruise's freaking hip-hop dancing, yes. It is. I think this is an amazing movie. I absolutely love it. I wish we got a sequel, or at least that, like, spin-off movie starring Tom Cruise as the... that asshole producer. Then we got True Romance. This is the director's cut. Saw this in the theater because this came out right after not too long after Reservoir Dogs. And Quentin Tarantino's name started to become something that was buzzy. So Quentin Tarantino wrote this, I do believe, before he wrote Reservoir Dogs and sold it. And what's his name? Tony Scott directed this, Ridley Scott's cousin. And me and a bunch of friends went and saw this opening night. And I'm not a big fan of Christian Slater or Patricia Arquette, but I fell in love with them in this movie because they are absolutely perfect together. They have great chemistry. They are really likable, even though they're doing some horrible things sometimes. But it is a fantastic, like, crime, thriller, comedy, romance movie. It has a little bit of everything, kind of like Trainspotting. It is fantastic. The director's cut adds in, I want to say, maybe 5 minutes of stuff, but it's mostly character stuff. That scene between Dennis Hopper playing Christian Slater's like deadbeat dad and Christopher Walken, where basically Dennis Hopper knows that he's going to get killed by Christopher Walken, who's like a mafia enforcer, and he just starts mouthing off to Walken the whole time, and Walken's like laughing at him and stuff, like he thinks it's genuinely funny. Like, that is one of the best scenes I think in film. That it is so well acted, so well directed, so well staged. It's fantastic. It's a movie that completely took me by surprise. I had no idea what to expect because, like, at this point, Quentin Tarantino had made one movie, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if this was going to have that whole time-jumping thing where, you know, the storyline jumps to all the different points in time to show you everybody's story from their angle. No, none of that. It's just a straightforward little crime movie, but the characters he wrote were fantastic. Originally, Christian Slater's character died in the shootout at the end. But they showed it to a test audience, and they were like, "No, we like him so much." So they brought him back and reshot a new ending where he's okay. Anyway, here's a classic horror comedy, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. If you have not watched this movie, get off your ass and watch it right now. You will thank me later. Yes, who was the one that brought up the whole... My girlfriend at the time? Yeah, my girlfriend at the time and I went and saw this in the theater. It was only playing at one theater in Chicago, the Music Box, where that 24-hour movie marathon happens. And we went and saw it opening night. They were only going to be playing it for, I think, 2 weeks. And, like, everyone in that theater just went apeshit for this. It's like Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness. So it basically makes fun of, like, horror tropes where the white bread kids look at a bunch of hillbillies and automatically think that they're idiots and stupid and, you know, inbred and whatnot. And then when people start dying, it's the hillbillies' fault. No, the hillbillies are the smartest people in this movie. They're also the nicest people in this movie. The suburb kids are the bad guys in this movie, sort of. But the thing is, like, when the deaths start happening, nobody's really causing it except the white kids, the suburb kids, because they're basically accidentally killing themselves on Tucker and Dale's property. But there's all these series of misunderstandings where people think that all these deaths that are happening are being perpetrated by these two hillbillies. They're nowhere near this stuff when it happens, except maybe the guy that runs into the branch and the guy who accidentally jumps into a wood chipper. You know, it's like all this accidental stuff, and then they get blamed for it. They must have killed them, you know, shit like that. It is so funny and well made and well written, and they're talking about making a sequel to this. It is fantastic. Shit! Dropping my movies. Anyway, 2 left. Twilight Zone, the movie. I love my anthology films. I've showed off a bunch of them tonight. This one came out in the 80s. Had a lot of controversy behind it because of a certain event that took place during one of the shorts. But it has so each short has a different director. One of them is one short is done by George Miller. One is Steven Spielberg. One is Joe Dante. And one is John Landis. There's a wraparound story, sort of loose, about Dan Aykroyd playing like this, I don't know what he's supposed to be, like a wraith or something. And he does that whole, you want to see something really scary thing at the beginning, and then he kind of shows up again at the end as a guy who works on planes. But the first story is about a piece of shit human being who's like a bigot and a racist. And he ends up like going back in time and seeing like the people who he has been saying the racist things to, like what life was like for them, like during the worst times in their lives. Like, you know, he makes he says something bad about a Vietnamese guy, and he ends up back in Vietnam, and he sees what happened back then. Says something bad about a Jewish person, and shows up. You know, he ends up being like in one of the boxcars being taken to a concentration camp, and all that kind of stuff. And it's like you would think that the TV show always tried to say things with the stories, or there was always like a subtext. That was the most straightforward one out of all of them here. It was just like, look, be an asshole racist, you're going to get what's coming to you type of thing. The only thing is, while they were shooting that segment during the scenes in Vietnam, there was an accident that happened where the lead actor, what's his name? Vic Morrow, who was Jennifer Jason Leigh's dad, I think. He was carrying this little Vietnamese kid while he's running through this water, and there was a helicopter flying overhead. John Landis was not known for running a safe set. I guess John Landis started off as a stuntman, so he knew what needed to be done, but he was always like, let's just get the shot and go. So he would normally kind of like skip a couple of steps when it came to safety. So he didn't plan things right, and an explosion went off, and a bunch of smoke got into the cockpit of the helicopter that was flying overhead while they were shooting, and the helicopter pilot lost control, and the helicopter landed on Vic Morrow and this little kid. The blade basically cut them in half. And like it just shut the production down like instantly. And that was like the big thing was all of a sudden John Landis is in court being sued by people for running an unsafe set. Took him forever to get back into filmmaking again and all that. It was like a real rough time for the guy. I don't blame everyone for throwing the book at him because that was a shitty fucking thing to do. But anyway, so that's one story. The next story is a bunch of people in an old age home become young again, and that's the Spielberg one. Spielberg's always the one about the whimsy and the wonder. It's about them like living for one night as their kid selves again, and you know having one more night of like not having to worry about things. I think that story's called Kick the Can. That one's really fun and kind of charming. And then there's the one that Joe Dante did about the little kid who has the power to do anything he wants with his mind. And he basically kidnaps people and holds them hostage in the house to make them like his family, even though they can't stand him and they want to kill him. But he basically scares them into staying with him. And he brings in this new girl to be like his new mom or whatever. And she basically teaches them what it's like to be a human being. You have these powers. Stop being a dick. Start using them to help people instead of serve yourself. That one's really cool. And then the final one is John Lithgow, the one by George Miller, which is a remake of an episode of the actual show where William Shatner was on an airplane and he looks out on the wing and he sees there's a creature on the wing tearing the wing apart. No one wants to believe him until they land and they see that the wing has been shredded. So John Lithgow plays the same character, same story. It's just done with that crazy George Miller camera work and style that he does. Everything with him is like super fast paced. If you've ever seen Mad Max Fury Road, and it's really fun. William Shatner, John Lithgow, it's classic. It's a lot of fun. The stories are uneven. Some are better than others, but it's pretty cool. And it's got this awesome Jerry Goldsmith score over all of it. Kick the Can is so good. It is. It is great. Yeah, it's like that's Spielberg like doing his like little like I'm gonna be all happy and rainbows and shit. But then like when everyone comes crashing back to the reality, like yeah, but we're gonna be old again tomorrow. We might die. Let's have one night of fun. I mean that's just really nice. I like that one a lot. And the last movie I'm gonna talk about tonight is Twister. This was like one of the highest grossing movies the year that this came out, I think. It was this. I think it was a tie between this and Mission Impossible, the first Mission Impossible. And Independence Day. Independence Day, I think, was the number 1 movie. I think this was number 2. Yeah, at the time, I thought this movie was kind of fantastic. CGI was still kind of new in '96. I mean, people were still trying to figure out how to use it properly. I think the same year that this came out, Dragonheart came out. And it was like the first time someone created like a full-scale character with CGI when they made the dragon and all that. But, Jan de Bont, who had just done Speed and now had a lot of clout in Hollywood, was kind of like, you know what? How about we use that CGI to simulate some storms and stuff and make these tornadoes look real? And they did a great job. I mean, there are people... This came out when I was working at that video store when I was in my early 20s, in the mid-90s. And there were people that would come into that video store who would ask... I got asked every single day, 500 times a day, what do you recommend? That I watched tonight. And every once in a while, I would say Twister, if we had a copy in. And I'd be like, oh, Twister's pretty good. And there was at least 5 people who would say, I will never watch that movie. I've lived through the real thing. I don't need to experience it again. I find, like, back in the day, this was fantastic. Now I watch it, and I'm just kind of like, The acting is not great. The dialogue is kind of shit-tastic at times. Some of the shit that comes out of these people's mouths is like, people don't talk like that. But when it came to the action scenes, I thought they were kind of fantastic. And I really love the music by Mark Mancina. But this movie was just all about the special effects. That's all it really was a special effect demo reel. And the scene that everybody thought was going to be in this movie that was in the original trailer where they showed that... the wheel that was part of a tractor getting thrown around and then it crashes into somebody's windshield who's driving by the tornado was actually just made for the trailer. It was like a demo that they did to see if they can actually pull it off, and they use it in the trailer. Everyone expected that scene to be in the movie. No, it wasn't in there. That had nothing to do with the movie. But it is fun. I mean, it's a time capsule. I mean, if you didn't see this back when it first came out, you're probably not going to be able to get into it, kind of like Cabot's saying. But it has a special place for me for nostalgia. Because I saw this in theater, I want to say 3 times. I liked it that much. But I do realize when I watch it now, I'm just kind of like, every once in a while, I'm like, ugh. That was not something you should have filmed. It's like the relationship between these two people with Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton. It's like, why would they ever fall for each other? All they do is fight. But you got Jamie Gertz, who is Bill Paxton's, I think, fiance in the movie. And she seems like such a nice person. And she's very tolerant, and she puts up with all the shit that's going on in the movie, getting dragged around through all this craziness. And then he still goes, I'd rather be with the woman that I'm always fighting with than the one who's actually, like, the person that he should be with. I was just like, it's stupid. Ugh, movies. But that's it for tonight. Probably one of the shorter streams I've done. Look at that. I said I only had like a stack and a half of movies to talk about, and I still managed to take... Well, you take out my break... it's just slightly over 2 hours. So, hey, thanks everybody for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Next week will be the last one of these where I just cover everything that's left in the alphabet. And I'm going to miss doing these streams. I like doing them a lot. The only thing I'll be doing live after this is probably just the pickups that I do, the pickup streams. So I'll be back next Thursday with the final episode of these film collection live streams, 7 p.m. Central next Thursday. How many Ys are there? I think I have maybe 4 movies in the Ys. Maybe. I have a couple Zs. There's a bunch of X's because I have all the X-Men movies. What are you going to do on Thursday nights? Masturbation. Oh, jeez. So, yeah. Come back next week for the final one. A top 5 3 list and a top 10 Bond films. I keep on doing top 3 Tuesday videos about movies and no one watches them, Cabot. Nobody watches them at all. I did my top John Carpenter movies. I did my top Steven Spielberg movies, my top Star Trek movies, and nobody watched any of those. Honestly, remember when I did that Let's Just Bullshit stream that I did randomly one day 2 months ago, I think. I can do those because those are fun too. Just chit chat with everybody. That'd be fun. I can do those if you guys want. Anyway, we'll talk about it next week when, the end is near. How about that? So I'll see everybody next week, hopefully. Glad that every one of you came by and hung out with me this evening. I will talk to you later. Chris, the old-ass retro gamer, signing off. Stay safe, everybody. Good night.